Hi, my name is Joseph Lamine. I'm the organizer of Sino-American Talks, and today I am at the Beijing office of Avenues, and I'm here to talk to Mike Levy about international education.
My name is Michael Levy, and I've lived in Beijing for 2 years. I lived in Guizhou province for 3 years previously. And in between living in Guizhou and living in Beijing, I was in New York City, where I worked for Avenues, which is a young school that's hoping to open 20 campuses around the world. So after opening our New York campus, I moved over here, and I'm working on the Beijing project. The idealistic visit. But short of that, it's hard because I think Americans reading the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, turning on CNN are getting a really wacky idea, a skewed idea about China. In the education space, what they end up believing is that Chinese students are robots who are coming to take your job, like some sort of like student zombie. And they have no idea how innovative the Chinese school system is as a whole. And they have no idea how much overlap there is in educational values between the average Chinese teacher and the average American teacher. So, boy, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge for folks back home to get a three-dimensional picture of China. So they got to come and visit. That's really the only hope. There's a large element of truth to it, but the diversity within the Chinese education system is pretty stunning. What's absolutely true is that we have a legacy in China of high-stakes testing as a way to advance not only educationally but through the society, culturally. The Confucian system is in some ways alive and well. And where you have high-stakes testing, you can end up with trouble innovating, because innovation that pulls you away from studying for the test could be viewed quite reasonably as a distraction. But what people are not paying attention to, unless they're in the field of education, is how quickly gaokao reform is taking place. So we're not there yet, but we might only be a few years away from a system of college admissions in China that actually looks a lot like the US system, where students are being admitted because of individual quirks and talents and passions. So yes, there is definitely an element of truth in that sitting and studying and learning what's in the books, that's part of the Chinese tradition, but we're at a moment where that could be shifting very rapidly. So the whole story is more complicated than just kids in rows learning their Confucian ideology. There's examples of students I've observed, teachers I've observed, and then the schools that I've visited that are really shining examples of how complicated the Chinese school system really is. There's a professor down at Fudan, and she is charged with teaching the moral education curriculum. This is the required ideology training at Fudan University. So if you look at the textbook, it's fairly traditional Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought. But she teaches it through an inquiry method. So she puts the textbook on the table and asks questions about it. So the students have to do the reading. This is required Ministry of Education reading. But the pedagogy is open-ended. Students sitting in circles asking questions. And she's Socratic. She just drills at them, drills at them, drills at them. And it's the only way you can make this subject matter come alive, and it's actually really fun stuff to read. And I think it's a shame that people don't read it with more of an open mind. So this is at one of the finest universities in the world, and that's one teacher in one place showing what's possible within what some people consider to be a very rigid system. To understand what the gaokao is, it's actually helpful to look backwards a little bit in history to the Kuju system, which was imagined 600 years ago, and you're a kid living in a village in the back of beyond in China. You have the right to take a local exam, and if you do well enough on that exam, you advance and you can take a more regional exam and then a provincial exam. And if you keep advancing through these tests on your knowledge of the Confucian texts, eventually you're invited to Beijing and you sit in what is now, we now call it the Confucian Temple, but it's basically an exam center. It's an SAT hall. And you sit, and if you achieve the highest mark on that exam, you get your name chipped into the stone and inscribed, and then you can move into the Forbidden City and be a high official for the emperor. There's a long history of that system in China. The gaokao is sort of a version of that, but instead of getting your name chipped into a wall, if you get a great score, you're admitted to a top university. Currently, more or less 100% of your of your admission to college is determined by this one test. That's pretty scary. But reforms are taking place. There are universities that have opened in China that don't look at the gaokao at all. There's a couple down near Shanghai, they're the most prominent ones. The Ministry of Education has allowed some of the prominent universities to reserve certain slots for students who display innovation and creativity. The big question is, how are mid-tier universities going to be, how are they going to relate to the gaokao in the future? We're not sure where it's going to go, but the government is committed to having a school system that allows for innovation and creativity, and that's going to mean the gaokao, they're going to dial down its importance in college admissions over the next few years.